Why don't we get going? I will call to order the meeting of the Wenham Finance and Advisory Committee at 6:34 on August 30th. Present are Jeff Calder,
Scott Schoenberger.
Dan Ojikonovich.
It's Finn Sprague.
thank you. So I don't see that there's anybody from the public, but we'll just give it a moment.
And just announce that the meeting is being recorded.
Thank you. Yes, this meeting is being recorded for playback on, what is it, HWCam?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, it looks as though there is no one joining us from the public, so moving along to announcements. First, wanted to welcome the newest members of the Finance Committee, David Harnish, who it looks like maybe was not able to join us this evening, and Phineas Sprague. So welcome.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
And I thought that maybe some quick introductions for all of our benefits, I guess. So I'll start. Jeff Calder. My wife and I moved to Wenham just over 2 years ago now, raised our now adult son in northern New Jersey, but I spent summers since I was a little kid in Cape Ann, so I'm familiar with the area. Retired recently after most of my career in financial services, the last 25 at JP Morgan Chase as a commercial lender.
I guess I'll go next. Scott Schoenberger. As of now, I guess I am the longest serving member on the Finance Committee, which isn't actually saying very much. But got my 2 years in. I work in due diligence consulting, focused on aerospace and defense sectors. And I have lived in Wenham for about 5 years now.
Guess we can go in order of, well, now I guess order of seniority. So Dana.
I'm Dan Ojikonovich. I'm on finance and healthcare and CFO and other entrepreneurial ventures over the years, but kind of grew up in the FP&A financial world at AT&T and Philips Healthcare and small businesses. I live with my wife of 25 years and 3 kids who are 14, 16, and 20 here on Topsfield Road.
Ben?
Oh, is it me? Okay, sure. So, yeah, Finn Sprague. I've been in Wenham since 2010, so that's about 13 years now. I got 3 kids. 2 of them just did a practice day at their first day in middle school. Another one in Bucher, 4th grade. And let's see, my background. So I grew up in Maine, kind of a big family up here, and came down to the Boston area for school. Went to Boston College for the master's of CPA, and I've worked at various different sort of high and low tech companies on the North Shore. Right now at Monster, the job board company, and I did a lot of FP&A, but now I do kind of finance operations, right? And let's see, I live on Arbor Street there, pretty close to the library.
All right. I assume everybody knows Steve Poulos, but Steve is the town administrator, town manager, town administrator, and he's joining us on the call. And would you be joining us on most calls or try to?
Yeah, I'll try to until we get a finance director.
Finance manager, finance director again. Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. So next up, I believe I sent out an email to this effect, but just wanted to draw people's attention to the Finance Committee webpage. Recently had posted the onboarding guide, just a wealth of information through the links that are on that page, and would encourage everyone really to take a look at it and use it as the resource that it is. Many thanks to Deirdre Parati, who's now a select board member, for spearheading that and getting it to where it is. So thank you. Next up, new business. I thought we ought to discuss and vote on a vice chair. I think the primary responsibilities would be standing in for me if I were not able to run a meeting like this one, or attend a meeting at which the chair of the finance committee would be expected to attend. So just kind of toss it out there, see if anybody wishes to be considered for the position. I know, Scott, you had mentioned you might be available, but if anybody else has interest, happy to open it up.
I am happy to do it.
Everyone's jumping at once there.
Yeah. After that pregnant pause or something. Yeah. Okay, then. I guess I will entertain a motion that Scott Schoenberger be elected as, or appointed as vice chair of the finance committee.
So you're making the motion, so I'll second it.
Very good. All in favor of Scott Schoenberger becoming the vice chair of the finance committee? Jeff Calder, aye.
Scott Schoenberger, aye.
Dan Ojikonovich, aye.
Finn Sprague, aye.
Okay. Congratulations, Scott. You are the vice chair of the finance committee. Next up, I am going to try to screen share. I hope I can figure this out. Screen share. Let's see. So just bear with me for a moment.
How do we do minutes for the meetings? Is it being automatically transcribed? Is that the plan? While Jeff's looking for that, I thought I would ask.
Yeah, I think, well, we're going to, so Catherine Tinsley used to do the minutes. She stepped down, and we're using this company called Minute Solutions out of Toronto, but they do a lot of work in the United States. We've been using them for the select board with, I think pretty good success. And so we'll be trying them for the finance committee as well.
So that's in process this evening.
Yeah, so we'll take the recording and it will go to them. They don't attend the meetings live. They watch the recordings and take the minutes that way.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm not sure I have this memo teed up, so I will try again in a moment with the screen share. But each of you, as I understand it, received the email from Steve that has gone out to each of the department heads and committee, commissions, et cetera, and the school committee as the official kickoff of the FY25 budget cycle. And as you can see, the instructions are directing each of them to produce a level funded budget, except for those items which, through contractual obligations of the town, do require escalations in cost. around what largely salaries, but possibly healthcare as well. Ah, great. Thank you.
Did that work?
It did, actually.
Okay, great.
To share your secret. As is mentioned later in the memorandum, there will also be soon, and maybe Steve, you can tell us if this has been sent out yet, but a draft calendar will be distributed as well. I was able to find the one from last year, and it looks like it began with a 5 chairs meeting in late September. So presumably we will be following a somewhat similar timeline. And then it will include the meetings with the department heads that we'll have and a number of other milestones. So that has gone out, Steve, or that should go out soon?
No, that is on the agenda well, I put together a draft, which is not a lot more than just updating last year's dates with this year's dates, falling on the boards that meet regularly, knowing that it's generally the first and third Tuesday of the month or second and fourth Thursday of the month, and then trying to coordinate some projected dates with the school committee to start to kind of pin down a time frame for the all chairs meeting and the quad board meetings for school committee. And then it just kind of goes from there. There'll be a lot more zoning hearings in this meeting with the MBTA zoning and things like that. But so it starts that way. Once it gets to a point where it's generally pretty reliable, we'll start to distribute it, knowing that usually over the next month or two, things are kind of in flux as we kind of coordinate with all the various boards and committees with our shared services with Hamilton and the school district and the school committees and things like that.
Okay, great. And then one other item related to the budget or review cycle. I know last year this committee met on Wednesdays. At least I think through the end of this year, given that there is no finance director yet, it would be helpful for the town administration staff that helps coordinate these meetings if we could hold them on Tuesdays. Now the select board meets on Tuesdays as well. So if we're meeting Tuesdays, I think we have to go second, fourth, as they are largely first, third, but just wanted to toss that out there and see if anybody had any particular or standing conflicts with meeting on Tuesday evenings this year.
That's fine with me.
I should be able to do that. The 6 to 8 time period.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, generally okay with me. I'm traveling here and there, so it depends, but nothing that I know of standing on that day.
Okay. Well, that's good news. It sounds like that's a go. Understand that there will be dates that and maybe there are some conflicts, but okay, good. Then I think we can plan around that then. Next up, related to the budget cycle, wanted to talk about liaison assignments. I know it was something that we started we gave some consideration to. And I'm going to give a go here at sharing my screen again. I'm going to need to get some Zoom lessons. Sorry, just bear with me. Mhm.
Jeff, you want me to just share it again? I can do that.
Yeah, could you?
Did it pop up for everyone?
Yeah, I see it. It looks good.
So I have filled in what I believe are the main contacts for each of the departments or the boards. Filled in a couple of names where I believe we already have some assignments, and then just wanted to start a discussion, see if anyone has any particular interest in being a liaison with these departments or committees. I would encourage everyone in maybe after the Labor Day holiday to get in touch with the contacts and start having discussions with them about what they are thinking about for the coming year, particularly around capital requests or really anything out of the ordinary. And my plan is as a standing agenda item for this year for this committee to include as a discussion from liaisons. If there's something to report, great. If not, then we move on. So in no particular, well, I guess I put this in alphabetical order. First up is DPW, and maybe we should reserve a couple or a few for David. But if there's any particular department or board that Scott, Dano, or Finn have an interest in being the liaison with, yep, let me know.
So, question,
yeah.
Jeff, just in historically, I don't remember last year. I came on partway through last year and I wasn't assigned a liaison role, but I didn't remember there being this many actually. And I didn't know if does somebody need to be liaising? And maybe it's just because the school district's broken out and there's 4 lines for school districts. So maybe that's why it seems like a lot. But is this kind of the standard list, same list we had last year?
Good question. And in fact, to my knowledge, there were not. When I joined the committee, there were not liaison assignments.
Yeah, so I can add on to that. So 2 years ago, we did do this, and Dano, to your point, this was the list or is the list. Last year we started doing it, but then we had so much turnover that there was no ability to actually have liaisons because we didn't have there were too many moving parts. And so this would be the list. By and large, a lot of these won't require that many touch points. There are some that are just easier than others. I know when we had previously done it, things like fire and police go together, so that's like an easy one to pair. I would say since I'm doing school building project, I can just do the schools in general. but a lot of these, especially like planning, land use, senior center, um, those will be pretty light in terms of actual work back and forth.
Yeah, I would think DPW, fire, police. I think those would be the heavier lifts.
And I think the value here is, it's probably in most cases probably not more than a couple meetings just to get to know the department head and really understand what they're up against more than just what they present with a PowerPoint or the 20 minutes or so that they spend with you in an open meeting. So really kind of get an understanding of their operations and pressure points in their budgets and needs and things like that, just so there's a member on the finance committee that can speak to it when it's in discussions in the event that the department head isn't there.
Well, I mean, it seems like kind of a natural for me, at least with the planning and land use, because I'm connected to the master planning committee now, and that relates. So unless somebody disagrees or thinks that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think that
You
makes
can put me
sense.
down for that.
Yeah, Scott, for everything school related. Finn, anything in particular look like something you'd like to cover?
No, I think at least this first year, I think it makes sense for me to let you guys take a look at the ones that you want, and I will attach myself to the whatever's left. Like I said, I've got kids in the school, so that interests me. I've got some interest in I've been going through planning boards and for building stuff in other towns, so pay attention to that. And besides that, I'm happy to cover um, whatever you guys think makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. Well, I think the two you just mentioned we have covered. So
Right. So I'm happy to
um,
take the other ones, whatever makes sense.
we do want to reserve some for David. Scott, Steve, when do you think that the department heads would have a sense of what they're looking to do next year, and as you say, what are the particular challenges they'll have with the budget? I'm just wondering if maybe because David's not with us, I should just hold this and we pick it up at our next meeting. Are we losing ground
Yeah,
here?
no, I don't think
Making
you're losing
contact?
ground. I think a lot of the conversations or needs that exist year to year. Like, police and fire will be, additional full-time staffing because the, part-time and on-call availability is dwindling. It's just not as popular as it used to be, and the pool to pull from it just isn't there, so they don't have response to calls. Senior center will be probably few services that he had last year that we didn't have the money for. Things like that. So I think that, I guess, a way of saying that if you push it another month, I don't think you're losing ground, because the departments don't even have the budget sheets yet, and they won't go out to the middle of the month, and we won't start meeting with them. As far as like internally, I'll have my meetings with them probably mid-October. So if you wanted to, identify it towards the end of September, early October, probably is a good time to get started.
Okay, then why don't we do that?
And as far as like the DPW and facilities pair well together, but the liaison with the facilities would probably be asked to attend some capital working groups just to understand how we've prioritized the 5-year capital improvement plan, and the rationale we use for rolling stock replacement and things like that.
Right. All right, then why don't we do this? We'll just hold this over and pick it up when David can join us, so that we get his input, and then we can just assign these out. So, but yeah, thank you. We'll at least pencil in Scott, you for schools generally, and Dan, I think you're right. Master plan and planning and use pair well together, because it's essentially the same people, right? That you'd be you'd be speaking with or meeting with. So we will do that, and I will pick this up at the next meeting.
Jeff, one thing
next up.
to, just quickly before we get off this, because I don't know if you knew about it last year, but the schools hold several, I don't know what they call it. It's just like a large meeting with the finance committees of both towns, the select board or members of the select board. Steve is there, and his counterpart to discuss the budgets as well. I just making sure you're aware of that, Steve. I assume that's going to happen again, right? With everything that's going on, there'll be a few of those.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, usually they do, right. Well, pretty much exactly. So they'll do 2 or 3 all chairs meet. So it'll be chairs from the FinCom and the liaison from the FinCom from both communities, and then similarly the similar roles in the school committee, and Eric and Vincent. And then we do a couple all board meetings, so it'll be the entire FinCom select board, school committee, and then the administration for all parties, and then kind of then as needed. I think they did 2 last year, and they thought that was good. It used to just be 1 all board, and they bumped it to 2, and I think people like that. So I'm anticipating that it will be that way again this year.
Yeah, as I look at last year's calendar, it looks like there actually might have been 3. One on a Friday night at the end of September, one in November, and then another in January. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's possible. Is one of them the actual budget presentation?
Yeah, I think that was the November one.
Yeah, like but Scott said, there are several. So and they're usually at night.
Okay. As you saw in the email from Steve, the select board is looking at possible edits to or revisions to the investment policies. Also, as I saw, they're going to be pulling the investment policy out of the broader finance policy, so that it'll be reviewed once a year going forward. And we, as the finance committee, have been asked to take a look at that and offer our thoughts on if we think that there are any areas of concern, or if there are any general comments about the 2 policies. Steve, I'm not sure what the select board was considering as the format for our response, but I took the liberty of going through each of the documents and making some comments. I thought maybe that would help guide the discussion that we have this evening. Did everybody have an opportunity to look at those, give some thought to how those policies read, and possible questions or suggestions that they might want to offer as a committee? Did folks have a chance to go through them?
I looked at it and listened to the spiel.
Okay.
I think I tend to defer to the experts, and figure we made a decision to hire investment advisors who do this for a living, and if they're recommending a different way of diversifying, I don't have any credibility beyond them to advise any differently. So that's right. I don't right or wrong, but
yeah, I think the principal change that was being discussed that night, as you're alluding to, Dano, was the inclusion of alternative investments in the OPEB fund, whereas right now it is limited to 60% investment in equity, 40% in bonds, and with that, proposing a different distribution. So I thought maybe I'll just run through this quickly. Steve, do you have any insight into how the select board would like to receive the feedback?
Yeah, I think they'll take it anyway. That's easiest really for you guys. I think they just wanted to before they gave it their final stamp. They just wanted to leverage kind of the experience, the financial experience that exists in the group. So,
Okay.
uh,
So why don't I do that? I've made some edits. I'd like to return this as a collective decision. Yeah. So if anyone disagrees with a comment or a suggestion, let me know, and we'll just kind of work up a joint response to the select board as opposed to individual responses. So I'll just do a page turn here. Everybody can see the screen, correct? Excellent. Yeah, so this is the general funds and long-term funds investment policy. It's combined into one. Just a kind of a general comment that I had was, and from my years of looking at contracts, it just was noting that there are a number of capitalized terms that are not defined. I would suggest that either they not be capitalized terms, or that they add that a section be added on definitions, so we know what banks, capital B banks, are, as opposed to what small b banks are. And then under diversification, I was a little confused by what was meant by not more than 25% of the town's investments shall be invested in a single financial institution. Not sure if that meant invested in, invested with, or on deposit with, or if it meant all of those things. To me, an investment in a financial institution is ownership of equity in that financial institution, but maybe I'm reading it too literally. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think
When
that's a
we're
good
talking,
point. We've
oh,
got
go
that
ahead.
the custodial question as well, right? With the banks that had a lot of trouble this spring, right? So we're looking not just at the health of the companies we invest in, but the health of our custodian.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, under restrictions, this is something I remember from where I worked. Restrictions on and concern around conflict. And the suggestion that I would make is that the restriction not be limited to simply the treasurer, but the treasurer and any of their immediate family. If the spouse of the treasurer, or should the spouse of the treasurer be, or should the treasurer be making decisions about holding deposits in a financial institution at which their spouse works or did work recently? It seems to me, if there is a concern about conflict, that extend more broadly, but that is just the way I've seen it in the past.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And then next up, banking company, capitalized term. I thought just for consistency, we ought to just use numbers rather than numbers on the chapter and Mass General Law everywhere else, but written out here. I'm not sure why the difference. And it seemed to me that under investment instruments, Commonwealth, we're talking about Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so that actually should be capitalized, not small c Commonwealth. And then another little typo. I thought this should read under the investments that can be made by the treasurer to treasuries that may be sold prior to maturity, as opposed to treasuries that may be sold prior to maturity. Minor point, but it is a different meaning. And then again, capitalized term. And then this section under diversification, we're in the section on long-term funds now. And the section under diversification, under general funds, there was a percentage limitation. It's the one that we were just talking about, Finn, that limited 25% of the funds to no more than 25% of the town's investments should be invested in a single financial institution. I'm not sure why that same would not apply to the long-term funds. So I would suggest that that adjustment be made. And then just continuing on, I thought under credit risk, just for clarity, we're talking about the quality of securities here. They must be rated A or better. A is actually, and strictly, letter and plus minus are the rating scales used by S&P and Fitch. Moody's uses a rating scale that includes letter and number. So A2 is the Moody's equivalent of S&P and Fitch's A. So minor point, but maybe for clarity. And then I thought this was kind of curious. It said the town will review the financial institution's financial statements. Probably would be better worded if it identified the actual person that should be doing that review. Presumably, it's the treasurer as opposed to the town. And a couple of capitalized terms that either should go lowercase or be defined somewhere. Under ethics, same point that I raised earlier about whether the treasurer and assistant treasurer, as well as immediate family members, should refrain from personal activity that would conflict with the investment program.
I just went through the state ethics certification, the 1-hour course. So, my sense is that this language here is significantly less restrictive than the rules we would already burden a treasurer or one of us with, right? So, like this language is not as robust as the rules we already would be asking the treasurer to follow.
So on those lines, unnecessary to point out, or
I don't know. Perhaps. I mean, the things that you've said there make sense. There are other things that make sense too. So maybe we ask them. This is probably, we're not the only town that is looking at this, right? So is this the standard language for ethics, or does the standard language kind of reference the the state code of ethics, right? And then we can replace kind of the ethics language here with has to comply with the rules and regulations related to ethics in the state of Massachusetts, that sort of thing.
And then remember, we're just making suggestions. We can't make any changes here.
Sure.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. And then this next one I thought was kind of curious, where the finance director might have a material financial interest in the financial institutions that are doing business with the town, or that they also might have large personal financial investment positions or loans that could be related to the performance of the town's investments. And they're just being asked to disclose that. And I guess in my mind, what does disclosing that accomplish, really? And should the treasurer just need to divest themselves of a financial position, a material financial position in a financial institution that's doing business with the town? And I guess, how would having that information disclosed, well, how's that information used?
I mean, I agree with Finn's point that ethics is a massive topic, and to try to treat it with a single little paragraph seems, a little strange. And why not just reference some proper Massachusetts ethics reference in there and call it good? And that would cover that question too, Jeff, I would imagine.
You would think it would be a bit more robust, but don't know.
Right. There were all sorts of rules in that course I just had to take about, disclosing and having who do you disclose it to, and they have to decide whether or not it's acceptable before you make any decisions, right? As a committee member, right? So you kind of have to recuse yourself until they've said, all right, your conflict of interest is or is not a problem, and then you get to make decisions. And sort of like this, it says, disclose if you have an investment. Well, before you can invest our money in something, you have to talk to us about conflicts of interest, right? And then maybe we say it's okay because it's your great granddaughter, or no, it's your wife or something.
Steve, do you have any thoughts on what would the finance director do with this information if it were disclosed to them?
I don't. I'm not sure. I've never come across it. I'm not sure what they would do. But certainly it's good feedback and things I can look into.
Yeah. Okay. And then next up, it seems like this Vera Bank rating service is fairly important to keeping track of the financial health and stability, soundness and stability of the banks with which the town is either depositing or purchasing CDs or using to hold funds. But in the first paragraph, it seems to be suggesting that it's a best practice to subscribe to this service. It's also possible that the town would not. Don't know if we are. I don't know if you know if we are, and why would we not? And why would we want to be reliant on the banks to provide that information themselves? Okay.
So I thought it said in there that, they would still have to provide it, but I don't know if that service comes with a fee, but it sounded like if we don't subscribe to it, wasn't the wording that we had to request whatever the rating was anyway? In the instance where the town does not purchase the Veribank rating service,
Treasurer should request.
Oh, yeah, should, yeah.
From the financial institution, and if they ask and they don't get it, then we don't know. That would seem the treasurer doesn't have the ability to make that, or has a lesser ability to make a judgment about the soundness and stability of the banks that they're using. But yeah, presumably there is a fee. I just don't know how much that fee is. And then under reporting requirements, I was a little confused about whether this is referring to two different reports or it's the same report, because the first sentence reads that the treasurer will prepare a report and distribute it to the finance director as appropriate. And then the the next sentence describes a report that would be provided by the financial advisor. So that was a question. I didn't know if this is two reports or one.
Yeah, so I think what it is, it's so the advisor will supply the treasurer collector with a semi-annual report, first half and second half of the year, the second half being a kind of the final report. And then this is wording that the select board wanted added in there. And then it will be obviously distributed to the select board and then presented within 2 months of the first half and second half of the year.
Okay, so we're talking about one report.
Yeah, one report. I think it could be worded a little bit better, and I'm thinking of a better way to word it. But the first sentence is basically making sure that the treasurer distributes to the finance director, and then it also is this same paragraph is making sure that these semi-annual reports are also communicated by as part of a policy to the select board, so that it doesn't, by not doing it twice a year, you're in violation of the policy, where it didn't specify the select board being briefed on these reports in the original draft. And that was the attempt to kind of solidify the requirement to do it twice a year in a public meeting to the select board was the red that you see there, although it could be worded better. I agree.
Okay. Okay. And then, I'm just again referring back to my days in financial services. We would periodically need to attest to our compliance with the company's code of ethics. So this may be consistent with the feedback that Finn offered earlier, but asked the question here about whether the treasurer should attest to compliance with the various restrictions, standards of care, and ethics as described in the policy statement, as opposed to just preparing the report. Just at a higher level of care.
Is this sort of like a rep letter where you're basically asking, the finance person to, basically say controls were all working, there are no ethical violations that I saw or am aware of, that sort of thing?
Yes, and I have followed all of the, with respect to disclosures, with respect to the other call outs and restrictions, ethics, and standards of care, the oversight of the types of financial institutions that we're dealing with, et cetera, that I've followed this policy. I'm not in conflict with the policy. May not be a step that select board wants to take, but I'd kind of toss it out there, see what the group thought.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to this training I took not just yesterday, so I feel like maybe I should remember it better. But I think we have to take it every 2 years, and it's just a training, not a commitment that I have followed it. That I definitely didn't violate anything. It's just a certification every 2 years. So I don't know what sort of rules we're already be asking a treasurer or finance director to do, right? As a town employee, right? They may have to actually do what you've just described, more so than the sort of things we have to do as volunteer committee members. But I like your idea.
Yeah, we follow pretty much what you followed, the every other year certification through the state. That's essentially our ethics training.
Well, unless there's an objection, I suppose we could always just raise it and select board can accept or not accept the suggestion, or collectively would the group rather just not even go there?
I'm fine with having the conversation and see what the reaction might be. You know,
Yeah, I
if
agree.
there's strong resistance to it, then I'm not going to push hard on it, but I could see why we might want, you know, just like we require public companies to kind of rep to the accuracy.
Okay, well, thank you for the feedback on that one. Try to move this along. The other one is similar.
I had a question about this one, just because I had to look at a couple of IPSs recently. Like the I immediately searched for the word benchmark, right? And there's a section up top that says we will pick benchmarks that are applicable, and then you go down to the appendix, and it actually lists a bunch of appendices, or sorry, a bunch of benchmarks that we would choose. Like you know, as a town, like who is it the treasurer's responsibility to agree with those benchmarks? Um, and you know, as a citizen, I might say, all right, you know, how much money, you know, what is the term alpha, right? Did we beat our benchmarks or not? Right? Like I don't know how the process goes for us to kind of decide we like the work that the investment, you know, advisor has done for us, and you know what investments they've had, have they beat the benchmarks or not? Um, I saw the benchmarks discussed here, but I've never seen how Wenham makes that decision.
I'm not sure we've done that. Well, the town has done that in the past, and but it's something that we're kind of trying to move towards with actual reporting requirements, so that the board knows what's going on and kind of get an idea of our overall performance in relation to the market or the benchmarks that we're using. So it's certainly a direction we're trying to go.
Right. I've had to try to explain to a lot of non-financial people, you know, the market goes up and goes down, and our investment advisor, you know, is trying to beat that market, right? And, you know, if the market goes down and our investments go down at the same rate, it's easy to kind of explain that to folks. Hey, you know, we're kind of locked in with the market. So this is our benchmark, and the investment advisor kind of lives or dies on our opinion of it, right? If they're tanking versus the benchmark, you know, they're at risk of not being we're not being a client of them anymore. So it's not in here in the IPS, I think specifically, maybe deliberately, but just wondering what anybody might think on that topic.
I think that's relevant in this next one, the OPEB trust, because my understanding of the first one, it's such limited investment opportunity. It's largely treasuries and really high quality bonds. The OPEB trust is the one that, to your point, Dano, was the focus of the select board meeting, where it was suggested that in order to maybe get some relief on the actuarial analysis of, you know, what is the unfunded liability, that a different investment strategy be considered, and that would include alternatives, and also more weighting toward equity and less to fixed income, given the very long horizon on those funds, and when those funds would be paid out. So I think, yeah, Finn, this is where benchmarking and performance becomes more critical, I believe. I'll move through this quickly. They're pretty consistent with, you know, comments in the first one, although there are a couple of call outs under alternative investments that should not be or will not be allowed. I was a little surprised that cryptocurrency wasn't listed here, because there were a couple of call outs of things that would be prohibited. given their volatility. Not sure we want any town funds invested directly in cryptocurrency. Similar to before, the town's going to review something, maybe just call out who within the town government has that responsibility. This was curious. The town will, as much as feasible, mitigate foreign currency risk. Thought it would be helpful to describe how we would mitigate foreign currency risk. The only thing I know of is hedging. I don't know if the town gets involved in hedging, and maybe it is more so referencing just avoiding being subject to foreign currency risk as opposed to trying to mitigate it. I'm not sure. Yeah, so same comments under ethics and disclosures. Is it divest? Is it disclose? But yeah, I'll try to go on to the one of the state websites and see what I can find about the ethical requirements and see if there's something more detailed that we might want to consider referencing, trying to reinvent the wheel to the point the committee made earlier.
I don't know that you have to spend time on that, do you, Jeff? I mean, I'm sure they'd much appreciate it, but I wonder if you just make the suggestion that they use the right language and they include it when they revise it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Is this written by our investment advisor? Provided by them, written by them?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I like that suggestion.
But it's owned by us. It's our document. They're just doing it as a favor. Is that kind of the idea, Steve?
Yeah, they make that right. So they make the suggestion. We haven't. If you looked at the statement that was last looked at in 2015 or 14, it's very similar to this. It's pretty much boilerplate what they provide all their clients in the Commonwealth, which is a majority of the cities and towns. So yeah, it is that, but it, when you adopt it, it becomes your document. So
it becomes yours.
Right.
Yeah, particularly since I guess there is an acknowledgement of having received this by the treasurer. Okay. Yeah, good thought. I guess that it really should, if it's of interest to the select board to pursue something, it's a little more descriptive that it be the responsibility of the author of this policy.
And I will go back to them and before presenting to the select board have draft responses to majority of these questions and comments, just to see where they stand. I know like the crypto, I don't know if they could, because I think the paragraph before may restrict it to like index funds and stuff, so you're not actually buying the currency or the commodity itself. So I don't know if crypto is available on the, I'm not a finance person, but like more on the open exchanges. So again, but I'll bring it up to them. I know there was a concern with Gary on the select board with commodities, whether you could, if you were buying the gold or whatever, forced delivery, and that was kind of the answer to that.
Take delivery or have to provide delivery of.
Yeah, well, they don't actually buy the assets; they buy
a fund,
an index fund or something.
Okay, that's a good point. Maybe that comment is not relevant in that.
I don't know that to be the case, and I'll bring it up, but I just that was kind of my thought, that it could be a possible answer to that.
And then getting back to relationship with financial institutions, I just didn't know what this meant. If a banking institution is selected as manager, the town will subscribe to Verabank. I just don't know what that means. What would the role of a banking institution as manager be?
Right. You know, that's a good point.
Same question about the reports. We covered that. And then just maybe we didn't completely focus on this on the other policy, but curious when it reads that the report will be prepared by the treasurer and distributed to the town administrator as appropriate. Just to draw the question, to you as the town administrator, foresee when it would not be appropriate for you to get this report?
That's a fair point. Probably
shouldn't it just be distributed to you? Why leave it to some discretion?
I agree.
Okay, attestation. And then this, I think to the point that you were making, Finn, it kind of occurred to me in the reporting, and it's not that well described other than these half a dozen bullet points. What is being reported on a semi-annual basis in terms of performance of the portfolios? It references what the investments are in, it references income earned, but I sure would like to have information about unrealized gains, losses, and portfolio performance relative to the benchmarks. And maybe this is in the report. We don't. I've not seen the report. Can only go by what is described here as minimum requirements, but that seems to be absent and a pretty significant form of reporting on an investment portfolio. In addition to other things, but those are the ones that kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, I don't know how far down to dig on it, but I'd agree with your comment, right? Like a really robust semi-annual report, and the indices that they've decided to benchmark us against, I'm not in the industry, but I don't recognize them, so I don't know if they're the right ones. But it'd be really cool if I could set my benchmark as something that I know is always lags the market, and then very easy to beat. But I'm a little jaded there, so.
Yeah, good point. I don't know, Steve, have you seen this report? Is it more comprehensive than these minimum requirements would suggest?
I have not seen it because something we're just trying to start now. To the extent it's been distributed to the treasurer, I haven't seen it. We're just trying to make sure that it is distributed to the treasurer, it's appropriately distributed internally and then presented. So it's all good feedback as to what should be in it. And definitely be taking it back, because I'd like to at least, at a minimum, to performance to the benchmark or overall market would be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's got to be a way of evaluating the performance of the investment advisor, and that would seem to be the most direct way to do that. Are they, as stated in the policy, which is the goal, to be at or ahead of the indices? The only other comment I had was earlier in the policy statement, there was a definition of what is equity, what is fixed income, and what is alternatives. There was not a definition of what is balanced, and thought that that probably should be included as well, since that is one of the categories here. Though it's not to be used as part of a targeted portfolio, but it could be used and still be within compliance with the investment strategy. That's all I had, guys. Thanks for bearing with me.
Jeff, looks like a lot of reading and a lot of work here, so appreciate you going through that and bringing us through it.
Yeah, that was thorough. That was good.
So I guess I'll just put it out there again. Any objection to this being presented as our collective comments on these policy statements? Anything the group would like removed? I can add something to the effect under ethics in particular, referencing the state code of ethics, as opposed to trying to come up with what the criteria is independently.
That sounds good, Jeff, to me.
Yeah.
Same here. Same here. I just questioned back on the other topic. Do we need to say anything to the select board about our perspective on the allocation question, or do we not need to respond on that?
Yeah, so what specifically?
About whether we're supportive of opening up the investment, alternative investments for OPEB.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can make comment to that for sure.
Well, I mean, were they asking specifically for our feedback on that? If they were, we can, but if they weren't, then we don't need to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they really do exactly what they were looking for feedback on. Like, obviously, these policy statements, but as part of the process of doing that, these policy statements is they changed to allow for alternative investments, and so it's certainly fair if you guys wanted to comment on it.
Yeah, then maybe just quickly a discussion on the decision to open it up. Currently, the trustee or the investment manager is restricted to trying to maintain a balance of 60% equity, 40% fixed income, no alternatives, and the new policy will allow for alternative investments and within the range of that are presented in this addendum.
So the experience I've had recently with IPSs and this sort of stuff is the investment advisor coming to another kind of board and saying, we think you should be doing more private equity stuff. And that's what I kind of I'm sensing here as well. And people are nervous because alternative investments are a lot more complicated and they're often a lot less liquid. And they're not people aren't very familiar with them, right? So the investment advisors that live and breathe this stuff, it seems natural to them, or perhaps their fees are higher. So I see them pushing these, and it might make sense. It's just like the regular person in the street would be a little more nervous or would need more understanding about why it was a good investment, right? When it's not something that they would see talked about on the news and that sort of thing. So there's a little more resistance from the other board I'm on, to do this, right? So they're saying, hey, you should move to X% of your portfolio, and we're saying, let's cut that target in half, right? And just dip our toe in. So that was kind of what we talked about on another board I'm in.
And as noted here, what may be less liquid investments, as you mentioned, private equity, targeting not more than 5%, and more than twice that in more liquid alternatives. But yeah, fair point. I think there's an expectation that hedge fund managers don't become as wealthy as they are because they are not getting large fees. So yeah, these could be more expensive investments. The management of them could be more expensive. But I think the point made by the investment advisors, I thought was a good point, that when both stocks and bonds were being negatively impacted by market conditions over the last couple of years, the town really didn't have much in the way of alternatives for investment, because those are the two investment vehicles they were limited to. Now, I'm not sure we're really in a position to talk or to make recommendations on the percentages. They are fluid, right? Anywhere from 10 to 30%. But I'll throw it out there to the rest of the group on Finn's points.
Yeah, I mean, one thought I had, and kind of along the lines of what Finn was saying, is, if you looked at this, and I understand it's just max, but if we had, 10% in private equity and 10% in real estate, which would both be, about as illiquid, I think those are the two most illiquid things we could have here. That's a lot in those two categories that we wouldn't be able to get out of. And I mean, since I do a lot of work in private equity, there's a lot of variation there. That's a very long hold period. There are secondary markets, but there's just a lot more going on there. I don't know the pool of private equity opportunities they're dealing with, what kind of firms we're talking about. I don't think it's necessarily I wouldn't go back and say we need to lower these or anything, but the numbers did jump out to me in that regard as well.
Okay, I can add that to the list of questions that maybe would be useful for the select board to engage the investment advisor again on the maximums and considering that upwards of up to 20% of the town's OPEB trust fund balance could be in what we understand to be rather illiquid investments. Why do you think that is prudent for a town?
I've always joked that my personal investment portfolio is heavily weighted towards Wenham real estate, and it's really illiquid. So to have the town invest in real estate elsewhere, we probably already have the town pretty well invested in real estate.
Man, that's a really, really good insight to me. I mean, just doing the math on the finance side, I know you're kind of joking, but it's an outstanding point. We shouldn't put any money in real estate. Our entire life is in real estate as a town. Now, I guess it's in our real estate, so I suppose we could diversify to other real estate, but I don't know. That's interesting.
I'll add a question here that's been raised by the committee as to what the thought process is of potentially having as much as 20% of the town's investment in illiquid investments and in real estate, commercial, presumably, and somewhere else other than our municipality.
Another question, and this could just be that I did not understand the proper reading of this fairly simple chart, but I didn't understand how, like, if we look at alternatives here, the minimum we're saying for alternatives is 10%, but then simultaneously we're saying that each of these could also be a minimum of 0%. And we're not saying that if one is 0, another has to make up the difference. So, if all three have a minimum of 0, how can we say the category has a minimum of 10? And it holds above as well. Like, fixed income is 14%. We're breaking that down between domestic bonds and international bonds. But we're saying categorically it's 10 and 0. And I didn't know if there's different weighting here, and that's how these were generated. And I figured I'd just throw it out there. Maybe someone understood what was happening there better than me.
My
I'll
thought
take-
was, no, all right, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, my thought was just it was minimum in any one category. So like if liquid alternatives was 0%, then you could have 5% and 5% in private equity and real estate. I guess
That's
that's
the way
that's the way I
yeah.
read it. I don't know if that's accurate. That's kind of was my interpretation.
That's the way I was looking at it as well. There's no requirement to have anything in those categories.
Yeah, my only comment was by not having a requirement to have any in those, then wouldn't the natural minimum for those all three together also be 0? Because otherwise, aren't we saying by saying the minimum is 10%, aren't we requiring investment in those categories below? How else could we maintain an alternative minimum of 10%?
Yeah, I think in the scenario that you're describing, in theory, then real estate could be 10, can't be less than 0, can't be more than 10. But say real estate is 10, and then private equity is 0, and liquid alternatives is 0, and that reaches your 10% for the category.
Right. I don't know. I guess I didn't see it stated anywhere, and so that's why I was looking at this like, why couldn't the minimum then be 0 to 30, right? I get it if they're saying we have to achieve this minimum in some way. I don't know. It just confused me for some reason. It's probably a stupid point.
No, I follow you, Scott. The group minimum should be 0. It shouldn't be 10. It's a typo or it's illogical. If the 3 subcategories are 0, then the group level should also be 0.
Yeah, right. I guess that's what I was saying. Like if the bottom in some way need to add up to the minimum, then yeah.
Yeah, but if you add the entire column, it doesn't add up to 100%.
Right. My concern was more that we're saying that I was mostly focusing on alternatives, but I guess basically what they're saying here is that they're guaranteeing that we will have 10% in alternatives. And I wasn't sure if that was intentionally what they wanted it to say, because that's how I read this.
That's how I read it as well.
Yeah.
Is if you add up all of the minimums, equity, fixed income, and alternatives, you only get 4, 5, 70%. So that's the floor, and in order
It's a mix. I understand that you would mix between them.
I think it makes sense what you're saying. I can see it both ways. Looking at like fixed income, if you look at like the max and minimum, so like if you use the minimum and max and the domestic and international, so if you had 0% international as the minimum, then you'd have to do the maximum domestic to get the 34.
So we just need to go back to them with the question and ask them if their intent was that there would be at least 10% in alternatives, because that's what the table implies. And if that's not their intent, then they should clarify it in the notes or somewhere.
Is that the question that you'd like to raise, Scott?
I think that it was just generally, I mean, it stuck out in alternatives because, I think the idea of diversifying into alternatives does make sense if we're chasing higher gains, and that's obviously the logic behind this. It just did seem curious to me that we would be not giving ourselves more leeway on the downside to limit exposure to alternatives if we felt that, we could get 7, 8, 9% returns somewhere else much more conservatively. And not that that's a realistic
Okay.
comment.
All right, I'll have another question that asks, just to clarify that the investment policy is essentially requiring that 10% of funds be invested in alternatives. Is that the intention? Okay. All right, good feedback, guys. Thank you. I don't know that there's really anything to vote on. I think we're in agreement that with those adjustments, Steve, I can forward these over to you as the committee's comments.
Yeah, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that, guys. I know that was it's always tough to do a page turn, but appreciate the the forbearance there. I don't think there's any old business. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Can I
Yes.
just throw out one as the liaison to the planning committee? And Steve, I
Yes,
don't know
yeah, please.
how important it is to emphasize, but there are these technical working groups coming up where different interested parties throughout the town, committees and other staff and others have an opportunity to feed into the planning process. And so these technical working groups are coming up in the end of September, 27th and 28th, I believe. And I believe FinCom members will be invited, or maybe already have been invited to one of those. I know I'm going to be one of the facilitators for one of the technical working groups, and they're categorized into different topics. I don't have it off the top of my head here. Actually, I do. There's one about honoring Wenham's story. There's one about Wenham for all the ages. There's one about fiscal and sustainable growth. So there are a few different working groups, and just know that that's happening, and you'll get an invite. And if you want to feed into the process, you're welcome. Is that fair enough summary, Steve?
Yeah, I think that sounds very very accurate. Excuse me.
Did other committee members receive that email? I think it was sent out by Margaret a week or so ago.
Yep, I will be partaking in the, it's on the 28th, the
September.
fiscal responsibility or fundraise. I
Yes.
don't remember which one, but yeah, I will be there.
Jeff, I don't know that I've received it. And maybe I haven't gotten logged into my Wenham brand new Wenham email. So I don't know if it went to my personal. I don't know. I saw that I saw it.
Okay, I don't know that your Wenham email has been set up yet. I've asked that it be set up, and I think that's been sent to the administrator of the email services. So you should be receiving that pretty soon, along with the instructions on how to set up your Exchange account.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I'll make a note of that right now. Someone will reach out to you in the morning with, both what the status is on your Wenham email and also a copy of the invitation that Margaret sent out. You want it to go to your personal address?
For now, that'd be great.
Okay, no problem.
And then, just so you know, Steve, I also asked that Michelle just have the FinCom webpage updated to reflect that there's no longer an open position, that it's been filled by Ben. So she said she'd take care of that as well.
All right, great.
Thanks for bringing that up, Dano. Yeah, I did receive that, and we'll plan on attending as well at the end of September. It's time. It's the opportunity to have our voices heard, right?
This is it.
Or hold your tongue for how many more years? This is well, I guess it has been a long time since when it was
Based on the last time we did it, or what we hope to do going forward?
Maybe what we hope to do. I know in another town where we have property, I think it's every 5-year process. Is that the goal here? Dano, have you heard? No.
I don't know.
No, I can't imagine it would be more frequent than every 10 years, but at least in the short term. But maybe that is the goal, to get to 5 years.
Yeah, so I imagine you want to keep people focused on this one before telling them that they'll have to do this again in 5 years.
What Steve knows the plan. I don't know. What is the plan or what is the goal?
Yeah, I don't think they've actually set a goal as to when they want to do it. I think 5 would be aggressive and probably 10 would be more realistic. Even if they did put a 5 year on it. I mean, it took 2 years to complete. I think every 5 years would be an aggressive plan. And the funding, it's not cheap either. I think it's going to cost the town almost $200,000 once it's said and done.
Any other comments from members of the committee? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
It's
I'll
seconded.
Okay. Seconded by Finn.
Yep.
Then motion to close the meeting. Jeff Calder.
Hi, Scott.
Dano.
Aye, Finn.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your night.
Cheers. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.